Steve Turner is our next speaker from Unite the Union. Steve's responsible for the manufacturing side. Steve, are you ready? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Ian. What a fantastic event this is turning out to be. I mean, I learn something every day, but I'm inspired by all of our speakers that have been before me, and I know we've got great people to follow as well. Asad, what a fantastic contribution. You know, climate apartheid, just putting a global perspective on what is truly a global problem, and how wonderful it is to be in Yorkshire, in Wakefield, even if just virtually. I can't wait to get out and about again following this crisis. Can I just say, as Matt did in opening that first contribution, you know, our solidarity to Chris there and the NUM. We've seen the Shrewsbury 24 victory, 48 years on, that fight for justice just this year, and we'll get that justice as well for our colleagues across the mining communities, and in particular that All Grieve Justice campaign. So many injustices against our class that continue to be fought. I've been asked to speak on full employment in a green economy, and I'm very happy, of course, to do that, because our economy right now, not just here, as Asad has just said, across the globe, is at a crossroads. And it's not just COVID and the past year, it's generations of crises that have emerged as a consequence of the political system and economic system in which we operate. We've got the ongoing difficulties and challenges from our break with our closest relations in the European Union. We've got automation and digital technology, and of course we've got the climate crisis as well to contend with. Many, many challenges, but of course huge opportunities as well. But like all opportunities, they're only opportunities if we choose to take them. And we've been very clear throughout this pandemic that at the end of it, there can be no return to any old normal. What COVID has exposed, of course, are those growing inequalities in society that have not just been here for the past year, but have been here for generations. And they've really come to the fore with the death that we've seen, the death rate that we've seen here in the UK, but its disproportionate impact on certain groups within society. We've got a decent jobs crisis, and we've had it again for generations, whether that's 0 hours or low hour contracts, minimum wage jobs, insecurity, low skills, fire and rehire, attacks on our trade union movement that go back 40 years and more, and a failure to address those even when we've been in power, of course, for 10 years, reinstilling collective rights to trade unionists to fight back and to win those battles that we need to win on behalf of and with, in solidarity with our members. We've seen food and clothing banks, queues of people, huge queues of people queuing up for food handouts. We've seen homelessness. We've got overcrowding. We're seeing now evictions, of course, back on the agenda of our families. We've got growing unemployment, 5% already, with projections that by the end of the summer and the roll down of the furlough scheme, that could rise to 8 and 10% unemployment, figures that we haven't seen since the 1930s, and levels of poverty that we haven't seen since the 1930s and 1920s. So look, there are opportunities right now to address those challenges and maximise the opportunities. But it can only happen, as other speakers have already said, in a new economy with a new politics to deliver it. And that's our challenge. But COVID has demonstrated that we can do it. We have nationalised, Michelle was talking about our railways, but we have nationalised the debt, at least, in our public services, even though we continue to privatise the profit. We have seen government interventions, the victory that the trade union movement won around furlough, safeguarded the pay for over 11 million people, each with a family spending money in our communities, continuing to protect people's employment. We have seen prohibitions on evictions, but we're seeing that being rolled back now. And of course, we've managed to secure investment in our businesses and infrastructure to make sure that those good jobs, those unionised jobs, are still there at the end of the pandemic. So these are political choices. They're political choices that are being made right now. And we've got a challenge to ensure that we have a new deal for workers as we come through this. And a new deal for workers must be based on a vision and an ambition to put people back to work, to maintain our demand for full employment, to ensure that we leave no one behind, no worker, no family, no community on our journey to a cleaner, world. And of course, working people and our communities must be at the heart, centre stage in the discussion around that transition. That transition for decent jobs with decent pay, secure employment, unionised jobs. And we don't know what that job's going to look like in the future. Let's have some vision about what full employment could mean for people. It may well mean that we can work 20 hours a week instead of 36, 38 or 40 hours a week. It may well mean that we can share the work that's required in order to create the society that we so desperately need. But it also means that we could share the common wealth that we create within our society as well. And God forbid we might just get to a place where human beings can fulfill their true potential as human beings and not just economic slaves in a system where people are forced to work to such an extent that at the end of a working day, all you can do is come home, cook some dinner, watch the telly and go to bed. We can actually participate in our society and change our society as human beings. And there are ways in which we can do this. Where do the new jobs come from? Well, of course, they come from our public services. Millions of new jobs can be created right now in desperately needed care service, in our health service, in educating our kids, reducing our class sizes, in local government, addressing 10 years of failed ideological austerity politics, cuts and privatisation, outsourcing and offshoring of our work. Of course, they can be created in our public transport networks. If we're going to green and clean our towns and cities, our skies and our seas, then we need to invest now in that energy transition. We need to manufacture those buses, those coaches, those railway carriages, those aircraft parts, those new engines, those fuel cells, those batteries here in the UK, including creating those new jobs in those new areas of work. We need to generate new green electricity, and we do need to end that reliance on fossil fuels, of course, but transition those that are currently working offshore in oil and gas, working in our refineries, working in petrol manufacturing and transport, working on our forecourts. We need to shift that employment to new green employment on same terms and conditions in secure new green jobs. And we can do that. We've got to have a vision and an aspiration, an ambition, a bold ambition to win that new work of the future, generating new electricity in hydro, solar, wind, tidal, nuclear, hydrogen as a replacement from gas. And we can do that. Absolutely, we can do that. Let's build the 1 million new council homes that are required in order to end homelessness and reduce waiting lists. Let's create the construction jobs and the apprenticeships for our youngsters, the generations that haven't yet been thought of, let alone born, that will want decent, skilled work in the future. Let's retrofit the remainder of our housing stock, the millions of homes that need heat pumps, that need insulation, that need heat exchanging, that need solar and double glazing, that need battery storage. And let's manufacture those products here, not simply put an import centre sign on ports around our coast. And let's transition our industries. Let's transition our auto, our aero, our steel and our oil and gas industries to create the millions of new jobs, unionised, well-paid jobs, and the apprenticeships, the upskilling, the retraining of today's workforce, as well as the opportunities, creating hope and a vision of a better world for youngsters to come into. And we can do that. We can manufacture what we need here in the UK. The outrageous scandal that we've got the 2 largest wind farms offshore in Europe off the coast of the UK, in the North Sea and in the Irish Sea, and yet not a single wind turbine is manufactured here in the UK. Well, let's manufacture those wind turbines. Let's manufacture those fuel cells. Let's manufacture and create the biomass that we need, the hydrogen we need, the fibre optic cable, the batteries, the solar panels, the buses, the car, everything that we need. Let's manufacture that. Let's get the components manufactured back onshore here in the UK. But none of this will just happen. Nothing just happens. The whole history of our movement is a history of struggle. We've got to create that new politics, that socialism, that shared destiny, that vision of a fairer, more equal, greener society. And we've got to bring people with us on the journey. And there is fear and anxiety out there amongst our people because these are jobs that they're currently doing that are good wage, that are unionised, that have allowed them to buy a home, raise a family, get a car, go on holiday. And they're looking now about what the future lies for them. What happens to my job if my job is transitioned away in a new economy? And what are the opportunities for our kids? So we have to take people with us on the journey. We've got to build the alliances, campaign, march, seize the moment with that bold vision. Strike to make sure that we win the new diversified products that we need to maintain our sites, as we did with Rolls-Royce at Barnoldswick, as we have historically with the Lucas Plan. Again, a fantastic initiative by working people to diversify to new socially useful products. So we can and we will do it, but we've got to get on our streets. We've got to talk in our workplaces. We've got to win this argument on the bus, down the pub, in the cafe, in our communities, at home, wherever that argument needs to be had. We have to lead that argument with an inspired, motivated, confident group of individuals centered in our movement. It's only our movement that will make this change. And as part of that, I'll finish in with a plug for the demonstration for the People's Assembly Against Austerity on the 26th of June. Let's get out into our communities. I'm very proud chair of the National People's Assembly Against Austerity. We're out on the streets. Let's join everybody on the streets, whether it's for Palestine today, whether it's for refugees tomorrow. Let's get on the streets and shout loudly and proudly about our shared vision of a better world. Thanks very much, and solidarity.
Thanks ever so much, Steve.